Welcome to People in Production Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Nelson, and I'm passionate about developing mid-level leadership in the manufacturing industry. Today, we're talking with Ian Reel, founder of Kaw Valley Precision, who took an unconventional path from teaching industrial arts to building a successful manufacturing business. Ian's story reveals how smart risk management can lead to entrepreneurial success. He tested market demand by subcontracting production for 4 years while still teaching before investing in equipment and going all in. What began with a focus on aftermarket firearm parts has now expanded into automotive, electronics, injection molding, and more. It's a perfect case study in strategic leadership and calculated growth. If you're in manufacturing leadership or aspiring to be, this conversation offers practical wisdom on building something meaningful while minimizing risk. Let's get into it. Ian Reel from Kaw Valley Precision. Welcome to the podcast. Good to have you, man.
Hey, thank you for taking the time to talk with me, and hopefully we can both learn some things and give back a little bit to this community.
I love it. I love it. So you have and I have connected once before. I've had the opportunity just to talk with you on the phone a little bit. Catherine O'Toole from KCNTMA said you'd be a great conversation. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation today. And let's start by having you tell us about Kaw Valley Precision. What are you guys about?
Sure. So Kaw Valley Precision is essentially known for our aftermarket firearm parts. We do a fair amount of work in the defense industry, doing various consumer aftermarket firearm parts is the lion's share of our work. But throughout the years have diversified into other industries as well. Anything from, we do some things in automotive, locks, clocks, oil and gas, electronics, some injection molding, and even a little bit into the foods industry as well. So I've really tried to diversify outside of our normal bread and butter, just because it's pretty difficult to dig a well when you're thirsty.
Yeah, yep, definitely appreciate that. And so you have a non-traditional pathway into this manufacturing space. So why don't you tell us what your career was looking like and when it took a turn?
Sure, a bit non-traditional, I guess. We could rewind all the way back to when I was a kid. I grew up with manufacturing in my blood. My dad brought me up in full-blown production woodworking, so think kitchen cabinetry at a massive scale. So I was around that sort of thing growing up, and never really got bit by the woodworking aspect of things. So didn't really know what I wanted to do with my career. And once I got to the end of my high school career, I go, well, what am I going to do with this? So was exploring opportunities and ended up getting on an athletic scholarship at a Kansas University, and not Kansas University, Fort Hays State University, but ended out at Fort Hays State doing track and field, and then they had a industrial arts program where I just really felt at home. Got exposure to other areas of manufacturing and industry that I hadn't been familiar with, and then ultimately kind of chose my path to go into secondary education teaching. So my degree was in industrial arts with an emphasis in secondary education. So that's where I cut my teeth.
Well, let's talk a little bit, because industrial arts can mean different things to different people. So
sure.
Were you doing wood shop, or were you doing more metal manufacturing? What did that look like in your context?
So the neat thing out there, it was everything. So I had introduction into plastic processes, woods, metals, foundry, CAD, CAM, some loosely CNC machining stuff where I did some self-taught things there, welding. So it was just kind of, we'll say that I had a broad stroke of a little bit of everything, but not real deep knowledge in anything. So kind of the perfect mix for being able to be put into an industrial setting at a school, whatever they would call industrial arts, I would have a little sprinkling to be able to be successful there.
What I think interesting is how that has changed. I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but when I was in high school in the late 80s, early 90s, you could either take I'm trying to think of what the fourth one. You could take home economics, there was a foods class, there was woodworking, and then there was drafting. So we're going way back when you get into
Mhm.
drafting class with protractors and stuff like that. Boy, this niche um, of that line of work has really expanded from what it was just a few decades ago. So it's interesting to me to see how there are pathways in that high school level that are introducing people to the manufacturing space and other production spaces. Do you have any thoughts on why that's changed and how important that's been?
Well, I think there's all sorts of theories, but I don't know why things have changed. But I can tell you from experience, when I graduated college with my degree, there was only 8 other students within my degree field, and they all had jobs. I was the only one that didn't take a job, and I continued on and got my master's in education as well. And then by the time I was finishing up and actually looking for my first teaching job, there was only one new teacher available in the whole state of Kansas that would teach industrial arts. So think wood shop or anything like that. There was only one, and it was me. So I had opportunities to really just kind of pick a school district if they had a job available. And unfortunately, a lot of the schools were faced with either uh, finding a teacher or closing the program. And that's kind of where a lot of the schools have kind of found themselves. Uh, and then once those programs close, they're so capital intense, they never come back,
Yeah.
or come back in the same capacity that maybe you would remember your wood shop looking like at that time when you went through. Um,
So appreciate innovative programs like some of what KCNTMA is partnering with
mhm.
to help to create apprenticeship programs and to collaborate with other awareness and education programs and stuff, because we need our young adults to be looking at this career pathway. A, because we've got so many people leaving the industry, and B, just we don't have a workforce that's inclined towards this type of labor because there's stereotypes around it. But it's a great career path that many people are having great success, and it looks a lot different than it did 30 years ago.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I to this day I still remember taking students on field trips into industrial facilities, and they had no idea anything like that existed.
Yeah.
And to just see the light bulb go off in their head, and them see a real world application to where, hey, actually maybe I could make a living doing something like this, because the technology that we would be able to show them in school, either with our technology, our equipment, or through the internet or YouTube or whatever, is only a small portion. Once they actually can see, feel, smell, get immersed into a shop environment that is actually generating income and providing value and lifestyles for people, it completely changed the way they looked at it.
Yeah, that's great. And it's such a different world and there's so many opportunities, and whether it's from the engineering side or even sales side in manufacturing or running robots and doing all the production itself and that type of thing. It's such a diverse opportunity field. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. KCNTMA is hosting Bots KC event coming up in late April. And prior to that event, we're going to be having a joint session with KCNTMA and St. Louis chapter of NTMA. And we're going to spend a couple days together with them, and that'll flow right into the Bots KC event. And that Bots KC event is students who are learning robotics, and they're going to bring their robots together to beat each other up in the cage that they're building and stuff like that. So would encourage people to check in with Catherine, keep an eye on the calendar, because that's going to be an exciting event to see students who are actively engaged in this stuff. So let's talk about your transition, man. How did you get from being in a in a salaried position in a school district to running your own shop. You initially didn't start with that intent, from what I understand.
Nope. So essentially, it started with a part-time job. I had a part-time job when I was in college in a gun shop, and I started to identify little sectors of the firearm markets that I thought were being underserved. And
Did
then
you
with my
discover that by listening to customers coming in saying, "Do you have something?" or just you had time to think and you thought, "What if? What if? What if?"
but more of the what ifs.
Okay.
It was borrowing ideas that were maybe used in the market that weren't being executed in a way I thought was as good or could be done better. So I took an idea, and with my background of being able to do some design and CAD work, 3D modeling, that sort of thing, was able to design out a competing product, and then used some resources that I had through my dad and through the college and through other people that I had met in the manufacturing sector to say, hey, is this part manufacturable? Can we make a go at this? And the
So
initial product.
I want to just hit pause for a second here because from what I know of your story, we're going to come back to this again. But you just pointed out the importance of developing a network of relationships to be successful in this industry. And
Mhm.
so you shared about it. And like I said, I think we're going to come back to this later in our conversation. But you shared that when you had an idea, the network around you was critically important to bring it to life. And I want people not to miss that. Are you naturally a networker? Or did you just kind of stumble into that?
No, probably not naturally, but always been like a garage tinker. So I've always had a building mindset, a see something and could probably solve it, or I may not know how it completely works, but I can probably figure it out. So I've always had that. I think that probably comes from my father, and then did a lot of work on a farm growing up. So you didn't have access to the right parts all the time, so you had to make things work with what you had. So there was some ingenuity and some garage ingenuity that we'd come up with. So part of it was just asking the right questions to the right people, and for whatever reason the right people happened to be around me at the time.
Yeah,
So
that's great. So I love that. Thanks for letting me hit pause on that. Continue. So you had this idea, you started work in your network, and it all started with an idea for one part. Is that correct?
one product, yep. And so then reached out and developed some shop drawings, and then had contract machine shops bid, and then got lined up with a machine shop to go ahead and make things. Was the one of the scariest checks I've ever written. So I, you know, withdrew some cash and was like, oh man, I'm gonna make a go of this thing. Am I making the right decision? And that was all
You're
in.
literally in that spot where before you can start selling something, you have to have that
That's right.
inventory. And
Hmm.
obviously, we all know you can pay for 5 of these things, but it's not going to return its investment if you just get 5 of them. So you have to get so many. And it's all just on hoping that the market will accept what you're bringing to it.
Correct. That's
Yeah.
right.
So, and
So
that's intimidating for any company, but when you're a one-man shop just starting with an idea, there's a massive element of fear in that. And I appreciate your candidness with that.
well, and I look back on it, hindsight being 2020, I was scared of losing quote unquote everything, but
Yeah.
I didn't have anything.
Yeah.
So what was the greater risk, not doing anything at all or giving it a shot? And I was young, and I go, man, I'm going to give this a shot. I think I would regret not trying over trying and failing. Um, so I just gave it a shot.
And
Um,
again, at this point, you wouldn't consider yourself being in manufacturing. At
no,
this point, you would consider yourself a retail person who now has a product that they've deeply invested in.
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So let's connect that dot from, hey, this is starting to take off. Hey, I need more orders. Can you guys hurry up a little bit? When did it shift for you that, hey, this should be a manufacturing move for
Well,
you?
so it shifted for me when the market started to accept and like what I had going on. So I would sell the parts. I would reorder the parts. and take all the profits and loop it back into buying more and having them manufacture more, and it just never seemed to keep up. I was always out Sales were always outpacing what I could have manufactured. um, and then I was bringing more parts to market. I was having more designs manufactured. uh, and then I had a dealer network that started to get large enough that new ideas, I couldn't limp into the market with 50 parts. I had to limp into the market with 250 or 350 or 500 parts. Well, if the part was unproven and it was still just a prototype, it was hard to write the checks to get 500 of those in the hopes that that would be good. So that became kind of a daunting task. Um, and I was doing all this, part time, still while teaching. And from 2013 to 2017, so I did that for 4 years. Continued to develop parts, continued to uh, essentially subcontract out everything, all the machining work, and what I was doing was customer service, order fulfillment, and that sort of thing, and continue to design parts in the evenings
So
and
were you
mostly
literally inventorying all this in a spare bedroom or something, or did you have a storage unit? What did that look like for you?
basement of a rental.
Okay.
Is where I did a lot of the distribution out of, and then towards the latter part, before leaving teaching full time and doing this full time, I did have a space that I rented and actually had two employees, that were working in Kaw Valley Precision while I was at school teaching.
Just doing fulfillment services for you.
Yep, fulfillment, billing, inventory, QC, that sort of thing. So fulfillment type stuff.
All
Yeah.
right. So we're getting to the part of the story where you're like, I'm going to take the next leap and
Yep.
I'm going to invest in my own thing and walk away from teaching. Uh,
Right.
how many products were you offering at that point in your journey? Would you?
So I was around 15 products,
Okay.
probably, give or take,
All right.
15 products, and it really came down to this crossroads I was in. Was like, okay, I need to diversify across more machine shops. More people need to have their hand because I need more volume. Uh, and then it really came down to, well, how much money do I need to bring to the table to get all these new inventory streams flowing? And that could be one option. The other option would be, well, what would it look like to go purchase a CNC machine, figure out how to run this thing, and then machine my own inventory? Because I mean, there's margin to be made there too. So it was, I asked a lot of questions, started getting RFQs on machines, talking to machine builders, talking to people in the area that had done this before, um, and then just basically did a math problem with my wife at the dinner table to zero, and to see how much I needed to bring in and what I was walking away from, where she needed to pick up some slack, and in the budget, and we ultimately decided, hey, let's give this a shot. So
Yeah, and I think people need to understand that when you go into business, um, it's not just you going into business, you're taking your family into business with you. And
mhm,
there's a vulnerability there and it requires that team participation. And I see people trying to do it on their own as if it's not a team thing. And a lot of times that's so taxing on the relationship that either the relationship or the company has to be sacrificed. And
right.
neither of those scenarios is a healthy scenario. So I appreciate you bringing to light that, hey, this was a mutual conversation because the risk involved both of us. And she was willing to help provide some of that stability in case it was a slow lead up to success.
For sure. And I should also add, my path to a CNC machine shop, or my first machine, wasn't I had an idea, bought a CNC machine, then hoped the market liked it. It was designed a part, subbed out everything,
You tested it.
found and had 4 years of sales data that said, hey, whatever you're doing is good. Keep doing
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Then bought the machine to then support a business that was already established with 4 years of sales data that were all trending up. So
And you're
um,
just changing your sourcing
correct.
from a vendor to yourself, and
Correct.
now you're changing your financial model as a result of that proven
Yep.
track record.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's great. Thanks for that distinction.
Right.
So
Yep.
you don't have to risk everything without testing the market. It might be a slower build, but you can have more certainty in the process.
Well, and at the end of the day, I mean, a machine tool is a risk, and owning a business is a risk. And if you can have other people make good parts for you, and you can work on some of the other stuff that's very difficult to develop, like, the market, website, employment, shipping, fulfillment, quality control, all those things that are burdened in a business. Um, there's a lot to it. So I wouldn't, and I've had a lot of entrepreneurs come through the shop and have ideas. And I say, well, you just might as well let me make some of these parts at first versus, going and burdening yourself with whatever tens of thousands of dollars manufacturing machine, all to spend tens of thousands of dollars in inventory again. I mean, you're spending the money either way. Which one's going to leave you with less risk? So
Love it. So here's what I want to do. We're gonna get back to this whole transition point of
sure.
when the shop took to life, but I want to talk a little bit. You are currently on the board of KCNTMA, is that
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Correct.
And is this your first year on the board, 2025?
First year.
All right. So what prompted you to get involved at that next level of being on the board for KCNTMA?
Well, I was asked, and it's kind of interesting. I find myself with a little bit different perspective. Um, I don't know if it was age or what. I don't know. But I start to see the people that frequent these events. They're interconnected. I needed a way to network within the industry. These individuals that are on the board and regularly attend the NTMA events are just people that I found myself being drawn to. And then when they asked, "Hey, I think you have a skill set where you could give back to the community," um, I was all in. I was like, "Okay, let's do it."
I
Um,
love that. You're saying the caliber of the people on the board, you recognize that it would be good to rub shoulders with that caliber of people.
that you start seeing some of the outreach stuff they're doing with the younger individuals that are in high school, and that can be kind of intimidating for some other business people. Well, it's not intimidating to me. I mean, I kind of get that age group of kids pretty well, and I can speak their language. I've been there, so an opportunity to give back, and also kind of give back to the community. We talk about the skills gap. We talk about all these things, but then there is at times the action falls short. So it was something I felt like I could join the board, I could join the NTMA, I could, put into action some of the things that people were saying that the industry was missing.
I talk a lot about this principle of you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with. And that's a principle Jim Rohn uh, had said it years ago, and a lot of people share that. And I think just being really intentional about, are you just accepting who's around you, or are you curating the people that you choose to let into that inner circle so that your thinking is affected by people who are thinking forward rather than people who are stuck in what they used to be. And I don't know, that may not be the sole driving factor of why you did the board, but I do hear that, hey, you saw some thinking that was heading a direction you liked, and you wanted to be a part of that, and you wanted to bring something to that. And to me, that's personal leadership, when you're choosing to put yourself around people that are next level thinkers. So thanks for that example and for sharing so much of your journey to that point. So any other thoughts on that before we move on?
No, I mean, we just have got so much stuff, so many positive things, uh, both working and continue to work, that it's going to be an amazing year with the NTMA. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. So we're going to finish part one of our interview here. And in the next part, we're going to learn more about how your shop grew and what your journey's been like since the time you opened up and went full time in manufacturing. So we'll look forward to having people join us for that next section. Thanks for tuning into this episode of People in Production Podcast. If you enjoyed Ian's story about starting his manufacturing journey, you won't want to miss our next conversation. We'll continue with Ian as he shares how he went from purchasing his first CNC machine with zero experience to building a thriving operation with 14 machines and 10 employees. How did his company manage to grow significantly during 2020 when many businesses were struggling? And what systems did he develop to remove himself from day-to-day operations? Join us next time as we dig into the practical leadership lessons behind Ian's continued success and explore what he believes is manufacturing's biggest threat today. Subscribe now so you don't miss it. And if you found value in today's episode, please leave a comment letting Ian know what you appreciated about his insights. Your feedback means a lot to our guests and helps us bring you more of the content you want to hear. I'm Ryan Nelson, and this is the People in Production Podcast.